Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to go over the different brands within the Hyatt Hotel program. Now when it comes to the points and miles game, you hear people put Hyatt Hotels at the top. And the reason for this is because of the ability to get really good value for your points consistently with Hyatt when redeeming them. Now, there are three major players in the points and miles game when it comes to hotels. And those major players end up being Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt. And the reason why these three hotel programs are actually the major players in it is not only because they have massive footprints, but also because the three of them have the ability for transferable currencies to transfer over to their programs. So for Hilton and for Marriott, you can end up using membership reward points through American Express, and for Marriott and Hyatt, you can use ultimate reward points through Chase. Now, although you can transfer these points over to these different hotel programs, not all points are created equal. So say for instance, you end up having 100,000 Hilton honor points, those aren't going to be more valuable than 50,000 Hyatt points, because Hilton points are actually usually on average worth less than what Hyatt points are. And that's the reason why people usually end up liking to get Chase Ultimate Reward points and transfer them over to the Hyatt Hotel program, because of the fact they can end up usually getting somewhere close along the lines of 2 cents per point. Now, if you're someone who happens to like to stay at Hyatt Hotels, you don't already happen to have a World of Hyatt credit card or a Chase Ultimate Rewards earning credit card, I highly recommend that you end up getting one, because then you can end up maximizing your rewards when you end up staying there and having a better experience from that. If you do happen to decide to get one of these cards, I will have referral links down below, and if you decide to use them, they will help out the channel. I'd be very thankful for your support. So the first hotel we're going to go for with the Hyatt Hotel program is going to end up being their top tier hotel. This is their flagship hotel. It ends up being the Park Hyatt. Now there are 47 different Park Hyatt hotels in 26 different countries. These hotels are going to end up being their most luxurious hotels that they end up having. You'll see them in major cities such as New York. There's one in Sydney, Australia, and there's also one in Tokyo, Japan. They are absolutely beautiful, and they end up being incredibly expensive as well. So if you're someone who is really into luxury and wants to see, the cream of the crop when it comes to Hyatt hotels, think of this as being their, Ritz-Carlton for the Hyatt Hotel program. I'll show you some photos. You can end up seeing this one out in New York. Now this is in Manhattan. It's actually very close to Times Square. If you do end up wanting to stay at this hotel, I've seen it priced at $1,000+ multiple days, if not over $2,000 if you decide to go sometime for like New Year's or around a big event when people are all going to be traveling over to New York. So these hotels are not going to be for everybody, mainly because of the budget. But if you do happen to want to go to these style of hotels and this is within your budget, or you do happen to have a lot of Hyatt points or Chase Ultimate Reward points that you can transfer over to Hyatt, then I recommend checking out one of the Park Hyatt hotels if you want to end up having a super luxurious experience. Next up on the list is going to end up being the Grand Hyatt. Now the Grand Hyatts are going to be also a luxurious hotel within the Hyatt program, but the Grand Hyatts tend to be bigger when it comes to the amount of rooms and the amount of space they end up taking up, as you can hear in the name Grand Hyatt. It's not always the case. There are some Park Hyatts that end up having a lot of rooms, but typically the Grand Hyatts tend to be bigger hotels. Now, one of the more popular ones ends up being the Grand Hyatt in Kauai. This is a really nice hotel to end up staying at. So if you happen to want to travel over to Hawaii, this is one that I would recommend. These tend to not be as costly when it comes to points as the Park Hyatt or as when it comes to the cost, but it still is definitely higher level when it comes to luxury. So I think that if you are someone who happens to be traveling within leisure and you happen to want to go to a major hotel, big hotel, then a Grand Hyatt is going to end up being one that you're going to want to stay at within the Hyatt program. The next Hyatt brand is going to end up being the Layla Hotels. Now this is also going to be in the luxury hotel section within Hyatt. The difference with the Layla Hotels is that typically how their hotels are is that you're going to end up being more with nature as compared to the other ones more in major cities. Now, I'm not saying that all the Layla hotels are that way, but if you end up looking at their hotels, the 18 of them in the 6 different countries, you'll notice that most of them end up being in spots where you can end up going for hikes and seeing the different beauties of the world instead of actually being in the major city. Now, Layla hotels tend to be also incredibly expensive. This one right here that I have in Big Sur that you can end up seeing, I have had a difficult time even finding availability because of how limited it ends up being in space, but also at the same time, the amount of money it ends up costing to actually end up going to one of these, if you decided not to use points, will end up being thousands of dollars. I believe that this Big Sur one, the price I've always seen has been somewhere close to $2,000. But if you've ever been to Big Sur, you know that it's absolutely gorgeous. And if you actually look at the photos of this hotel, you see that this is an incredibly beautiful property, and this would actually end up being a great, getaway from the city and just something to be able to go experience and be able to relax. Now, this is one that is in California in the US, but the ones I've seen other ones that actually happen to be over in Asia that you can actually end up getting for a better price point than the one that's out here, but they still are going to end up being higher price points when it comes to compared to the properties around them. The next brand in the Hyatt Hotel program that I have is going to end up being the Andaz. Now, these are also going to be considered luxury hotels within the Hyatt Hotel program. These usually end up having more of a boutique feel and tend to feel more hip and with the city. So if you happen to be in a certain location, when you actually end up going into Andaz, you tend to end up feeling that location in there. Whether if you're at a place like the one here I have in Liverpool, or if you happen to go to the one in West Hollywood, there are a number of them around, but they try to make sure that you feel like you're actually in that city and in that location. So if you're looking for a luxurious hotel that actually has a boutique feel in a nice location, then I would highly recommend looking at the Andaz hotels in the Hyatt program. The next hotel in the brand is going to end up being Marriott. Again, this is also going to be considered one of their more luxurious hotels within their program. Now, the Marriotts are actually going to end up being more of getaway retreats. So that's what I would end up considering them. There's only 3 of them. They're actually all happen to be in the US, and these hotels are actually end up being, when it comes to price, some of the most expensive you can end up doing within the Hyatt Hotel program. But that's because they end up being full retreat getaways with them. So if you are someone who wants a complete reset, you end up going to a Marriott, well, they'll end up having different activities for you to do. You can end up, if you wanted to do something that's more like a spiritual cleaning or a meditation or something where you just want to have a complete separation from what's going on in society, then I would say check out one of the Marriott hotels. As I said, again, they are incredibly expensive. And when it ends up coming to the points, they actually aren't even in Hyatt's category 1 to 8. They end up being above it and they end up actually costing even more points. And if you actually happen to go with somebody, you don't just get to have it, for instance, like if I took someone with me to the Park Hyatt, where I could end up being, I just pay the points and the person comes with me. For this hotel, they would actually have to pay themselves with points as well to end up coming to being a part of it. So this isn't going to be for everybody, but for people who are into these type of, reset retreat getaways, then I think that Marriott can end up being an amazing experience and once in a lifetime thing to maybe try it out and do. The next hotel brand I have on this list is actually more of a partnership with Hyatt Hotels, and that's going to be the Small Luxury Hotels of the World. Now, there are 364 of these in 78 countries. These hotels are usually end up being all very nice boutique hotels that if you decided you want to go to super luxurious places, then that's what you actually end up seeing from Small Luxury Hotels of the World. As you see this one right here on the screen, this is one in Santorini out in Greece. This is absolutely gorgeous. This location is incredibly expensive, and this is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime type of trip that you might end up doing for an anniversary or for a honeymoon or something like that. Now, this brand only has a partnership with Hyatt, and how that works is that you can earn points staying at Small Luxury Hotels, and you can also redeem points staying at Small Luxury Hotels, and you can also earn elite nights staying at Small Luxury Hotels. But the thing you can't do with Small Luxury Hotels is that you can't actually end up getting your elite benefits from actually staying at the Small Luxury Hotels of the world. So if you happen to be a globalist, you're not going to get your globalist benefits such as free breakfast and upgrades that you would typically expect if you were to be in other hotels within the Hyatt program. So that ends up being a downside with it, but the fact that they end up adding 364 hotels to the program ends up being the thing that actually makes it very beneficial to Hyatt, because the one thing that Marriott and Hilton have over Hyatt is they end up having way more properties. We end up redeeming your points around the world, whereas Hyatt does not have that many. But being able to have the Small Luxury Hotels of the world adds an additional 364. So while they don't allow you to get all the different benefits that you end up wanting from being a higher elite member with the Hyatt program, at least you have the ability to end up redeeming your points with the Small Luxury Hotels of the world. Now, I have also noticed that the small luxury hotels of the world, when it comes to redeeming your points, you tend to not get the best value for them for most of the hotels as compared to some of the other ones within the Hyatt Hotel program. But that's not the case for all of them. This one right here out in Greece actually ends up giving you pretty good value if you can find availability. It's an absolutely gorgeous hotel. I would say check one of these out if they happen to be at a location where there aren't other Hyatt hotels, because then you can't end up still earning your points and end up getting your elite nights. I know that until recently, the small luxury hotels were the only ones that Hyatt had within their program in Rome, Italy. So I remember I was looking to try to go there, and I was like, well, I guess this is where I would end up going possibly. But Hyatt actually ended up adding a different hotel there in Italy. But because of Hyatt's small footprint that they end up having, this ends up being, I think, a nice benefit that they end up adding to their program. The next hotel brand on the list end up being the Thompson Hotels. Now, the Thompson Hotels are very nice, almost considered luxurious hotels within the Hyatt program. They were actually part of the Two Roads Hospitality acquisition, which added the Thompson Hotels to the Hyatt program. They are very nice, and honestly, how I would think of them is that they're kind of like being a Park Hyatt, but they're not as expensive as the Park Hyatt. They're still pretty expensive, but they're not as expensive usually from what I've seen. If you look at some of the pictures of these, they are incredibly beautiful, the ones that I've seen. This is one that I was thinking about going out to Mexico. There's only 15 of these, and they're only in 2 countries, so they are very limited. So if you are someone who wants to stay at a super nice hotel, but doesn't want to have to spend in the $1,000 range, but still wants to get luxury, Thompson Hotels are going to be a great alternative for that. They're not cheap, but they are incredibly nice looking, and I think a great choice if you want to get luxury within Hyatt. The next brand in the Hyatt Hotel on my list is the Unbound Collection. Now, this one is going to be, I would consider, very similar to like the Andaz, where they happen to be very boutique looking in major cities and happen to have the feel on the inside of the hotel of the actual city of the outside. I've stayed at Unbound Collection hotels, and I absolutely love them. I think they're probably my favorite within the Hyatt Hotel because of the fact of the feel inside the hotel. They just look really nice. When you end up going to the lobby, I feel like they have people connected. You're gonna end up, connecting with people around. It's very artistic feel. At least the one that I've stayed at. Again, they're all boutiques. They're all gonna have slightly different feels, but I think that they end up being really nice hotels. And this one right here in Miami Beach is actually a really popular one. And the reason for this is actually because out of all the other hotels that I've shown you on the list, this is the first one that actually ends up being within the category 1 to 4. And the reason why that is important is because if you happen to have the Hyatt Hotel credit card and you happen to pay the $95 annual fee, you'll get yourself one free night within a category 1 to 4 that will allow you to stay at something like the Miami Beach Hyatt Hotel right here within the Unbound Collection. Now, this hotel is $309, but if you happen to pay the $95 annual fee, you end up getting yourself a free night, so you end up saving yourself a couple $100s just from having the credit card. So that's the reason why you can end up being very beneficial from having the Hyatt credit card, but definitely check out the Unbound Collection. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a step down from the Andaz. I think that they're similar in price point. I think they consider the Andaz more luxurious, but Unbound Collections are absolutely beautiful hotels within the Hyatt program. The next brand within the Hyatt Hotel program is going to be Destination by Hyatt. Now, these are also part of the Two Road Hospitality acquisition. They are 56 of them, and they all are in the US. This, I think, is going to end up being similar feel to kind of like the Layla Hotels, where at these hotels you end up being more with nature. So if you happen to go to these places, expect to be at places where you're going to see beautiful sceneries behind you, and you're going to be able to do either things such as like snowboarding or skiing or hiking and that type of stuff in these type of locations. So definitely, if you're looking for those type of retreats, then I think that a destination hotel will end up being a great choice for you. The next hotel on the list is going to end up being the Hyatt Hotel. Now, this is just the regular Hyatt. This isn't the Park Hyatt or the Grand Hyatt, it's just Hyatt. There are 16 of these in 3 different countries, and they have, as you see, a small footprint of them. They all happen to be in large major cities. So if you happen to be in a major city and you want to have, the Hyatt experience that you're expecting and that you're accustomed to, then I would say go to a Hyatt Hotel. The next brand within the Hyatt Hotel program is going to end up being the Hyatt Regencies. The Hyatt Regencies, there are 224 of them in 44 different countries. Now, the Hyatt Regencies tend to be centered around business travelers, so they're very business centric, end up being in major cities. They will have usually big conference rooms for if people are holding different events. They actually end up being pretty nice hotels. I've actually stayed at the one in Dallas. I thought the place to be comfortable, nothing special, but it was close to the different locations that actually I wanted to go when out visiting my friend in Dallas. I was out there just for leisure, so I wasn't out there for business. But if you happen to be someone who is traveling for business and you happen to be staying within the Hyatt program, I would say check out Hyatt Regencies. The next brand within the Hyatt Hotel programs end up being JDV. Now, there are 20 JDVs in 4 different countries. They actually just added one into Rome. They turned a different hotel into a JDV hotel. And what you end up getting from JDV hotels, what I've seemed to find, is that they tend to be more, I guess, young at heart and very loud. So you see that they'll actually have like a lot of different colors within their hotels. This is actually one I'm hoping to visit out in Rome. As I told you earlier, that before there's only small luxury hotels of the world in Rome, but now that they added this one, you actually have a category 1 to 4 in Rome. But yeah, if you are someone who may be looking for something that's kind of artistic and fun and different, I would say check out a JDV hotel if there happens to be one in a city that you're traveling to. The next brand on the list is Hyatt Centric. There are 41 of these in 15 different countries. Now, typically how Hyatt Centric are set up is they're in the heart of the city. They tend to have upscale and nicer looking lobbies, but when it comes to the room, they tend to be incredibly minimal. And the reason for this is because Hyatt Centric has it set up for usually younger people who go to this hotel but are rarely in it because they're going out exploring the city. So if you happen to want to, be more out in the city and rarely ever in the room and don't really care about how your room is set up, then maybe a Hyatt Centric might end up being a great choice for you. It tends to be more for, I think, younger people as well. So if this ends up sounding like it fits your scenario for your situation, then check out a Hyatt Centric next time you end up visiting one that has one in your city. The next brands on the list is actually going to end up being 2 different ones, end up being the Hyatt Ziva and the Hyatt Zilara. Now, there are 5 Hyatt Zivas and 3 Hyatt Zilaras, and they're both in 3 different countries. These are going to be all-inclusive hotels that are going to end up being within the Caribbean and Mexico. Now, the Hyatt Ziva is for families, and the Hyatt Zilara is for adults only. So if you happen to like all-inclusive hotels, that's your thing, and you want to go to incredibly beautiful locations out in Mexico or out in the Caribbean, then I would say check out the Hyatt Ziva or Zilara. The next brand on the list is going to end up being the Yurkov by Hyatt. There are 5 of these, and they are all in China. They're set up for business travelers, so if you are someone who happens to like to stay at Hyatt Regencies and you are going to China, you want to get similar type of accommodation, then the Yurkov is going to end up being the Hyatt hotel you'd want to stay at. The next brand on the list ends up being the Hyatt Place. Now, there are 411 Hyatt Places in 24 different countries. Hyatt Places tend to end up being the cheapest hotels within the Hyatt program. I think the first Hyatt hotel I ever stayed at was a Hyatt Place. A lot of times when I do travel, I will just look for the cheapest hotel around, and Hyatt Place usually ends up coming to redeeming points or costs, ends up being the cheapest hotel. They're all set up like exactly the same, or at least the ones that I've been at, so there's nothing going to be anything special or boutique about the hotel. But if you are just looking to get, good value for either for your cash or for your points, then the Hyatt Places are going to end up being the ones to go to. They all offer free breakfast, so it doesn't matter of your elite status. You are going to get free breakfast when you end up staying at a Hyatt Place. It's not going to be anything special, but it is going to be given to you when you end up staying at their location. The next brand on the list can end up being the Hyatt Houses. Now, there are 119 Hyatt Houses in 10 different countries. Very similar to like the Hyatt Places, they tend to be on the lower end when it comes to cost, and they usually end up being set up very much the same all inside, similar to like the Hyatt Houses. You also end up getting free breakfast with them, just like the Hyatt Houses. I think that if you happen to be someone who's traveling for business and actually happens to be staying at a place for a long period of time, then the Hyatt Houses actually might end up being somewhere you actually want to end up going. And the reason why I say that is because of the fact of how it's set up. So they tend to be set up with apartment style setups. So you'll end up having a refrigerator, you'll end up having a microwave and things like that. So if you want to have that type of setup where you actually end up having more of a apartment or home feel because you're gonna be at a place for a long period of time, then a Hyatt House might end up being the location you actually end up wanting to stay at. The next brand on Hyatt's list end up in the Hyatt's Residence Club. This is Hyatt's timeshare, so if you understand timeshares or happen to want to get a timeshare with Hyatt, then this is what you would end up going with. And lastly, the last hotel I have connected with the Hyatt Hotel program, and this is a partnership similar to like the small luxury hotels and resorts, is MLife and the MGM Grand. So if you happen to go to Vegas and you want to stay at a MGM Grand affiliated hotel, you can end up earning points, earning elite nights, and redeeming points at these hotels. But similar to like the small luxury hotels of the world, you will not be able to get your full benefits that you would end up getting from Hyatt. So if you happen to be a globalist, you will not be able to get free breakfast from being a globalist. But you still can end up getting really good value from end up taking advantage of these hotels out in Vegas. If, for instance, you're looking to get yourself some elite nights, you can end up staying at something like Excalibur, and they end up being pretty cheap to stay at that hotel. It's like something, I've been there for like 26 bucks. Add on the resort fee, it's maybe something like 50 bucks. But you still get to be in Vegas and end up, getting yourself elite nights, earning points at this hotel. Plus, if you happen to want to go to, Vegas on the weekend or during a big event where maybe it's like a boxing match or an MMA fight, you're looking at the weekend end up being way more expensive. But if you end up wanting to redeem your points there, you can end up making your points end up getting really good value there. Say for instance, you wanted to go to Vegas for New Year's and the MGM ends up being 15,000 points to stay there. Well, if the hotel ends up costing, $600-700 a night on New Year's, you end up getting incredible value staying at the MGM. Now that is the complete full breakdown of the Hyatt Hotel brand. Now, there are technically two other hotels within the Hyatt Hotel brand that I did not mention, which is going to end up being Caption by Hyatt and AMR Collection by Hyatt. They are coming soon, but there are actually 19 different Hyatt Hotel brands you can end up staying at. I know this was a longer video, and I thank you all who watched and stayed this entire time. There was a lot of information, and I figured that since I've looked for this information, there must be other people who are curious about it. Instead of making you go out there and have to research it yourself, I'll just give it to you all in this one video. But I think what Hyatt does with their brands is really cool, and the really awesome thing that they also do, which is if you happen to stay at 5 of the different brands, you end up getting yourself a free night for a category 1 to 4. So you have the ability to get 3 of these within staying at the Hyatt Hotel brands. I think this is absolutely awesome what Hyatt does, because this allows you to try out different brands within their program and end up getting rewarded for it. So this allows you to see whether or not you like being at the Park Hyatt or the Unbound Collection or Thompson Hotel, and then end up going, oh, I get to try all these different flavors, and now I realize that I'm someone who actually likes to stay at this style of hotels within Hyatt. So awesome for Hyatt for doing that. Hyatt is an awesome brand and program that I love being a part of. But hopefully you like this video. If you do have any questions, drop them down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer them. If you do happen to really like this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.